Hello everyone and welcome to a banner review. You may feel that this video is a little bit late and yeah, I actually do agree. I've been trying to feel a little bit better and now that I am feeling a little bit better and more importantly I've had some time to really think about this banner also because the banner is pretty much still 2 days away. So I feel like I could definitely take my time thinking about this one and what I wanted to say, but anyway, so today we're going to be talking about the Final Fantasy X banner, whether or not it's worth spending a ton of resources. Now, honestly, I have my own opinions on things, and I'm sure you have your own opinions on things, and unfortunately, I cannot show anything because, as it turns out, the news has not been posted in game yet because it's still a little bit out. So that's okay. So we all know that the units that are on this banner. So I'm going to go through them one by one. First of all, Brother. Now, Brother is he's almost interesting. He's almost interesting. So here's the thing. He does have on him an AoE 3-turn, 100% chance to counter physical damage on allies with 120% physical attack from his limit burst, which is kind of interesting. Also, that's interesting is the fact that he does have just 30% natural dodge in his kit. Now, with that being said, he does have some chance to protect but no, Brother is not good. There are better units. There's a better 4-star unit who is evade, and there's just better options. So the Brother is not great. What is okay about him is his Trust Mastery reward and accessory with 20 attack, 20 defense, blind immunity, and 30% to water resistance. So if you're looking for an accessory with water resistance, this is pretty much the best. And given that there have been a lot of the 10-man trials lately that seem to be dealing with water and water-based damage, this is just a solid thing to get your hands on. So in general, Brother's TMR is actually really good, but not necessarily for attackers. I think it's better for tanks, but tanks for the accessory. Next up is Belgemine, the Dead Summoner. Sorry, spoilers, but Final Fantasy X is what? How many years old now? It's okay. Anyway, the Trust Mastery reward from her is a 40% magic and 10% increase to summon damage. Obviously, the units that come to mind that this is best for, I should say, CG Citra, Yuna, and Kid Rydia, as well as any magic summoners in the future. But probably those are the only ones. 10% extra summon damage is just really nice. Other than that, in her kit, she does have some interesting 7-hit Holy Explosion chaining attacks. So for a 4-star unit, to have Holy Explosion frames on different elemental attacks is really nice. They also debuff the enemies and their AoE. So Belgemine is actually a really decent discount summoner that can build a summon gauge, she can increase summon damage, and she does have an ability that allows her to double cast her ability. So 2 of her, if you're running on a budget, Belgemine is just really, really solid and a pretty nice TMR to go with it. Now, for people who are maybe a little bit long-term or aren't using summoners that much, I wouldn't recommend trying that hard to get Belgemine because you probably already have better chaining options. And the other thing is that Emeralda, I believe is how you pronounce her name, but from the limited banner is just a better TMR. The 5% MP is just more valuable for magic damage dealers than the general 40% magic we're seeing here. So this is a very specific TMR for very specific units, I think. But there you go. Now, the next 2 are, of course, our 5-star units. And I have to admit that when I'm thinking about these 5-star units, there's a specific unit that I'm going to compare each of these to. One of them we are going to compare to CG Lid and the other to CG Hayu. So first of all, Auron. Now, one thing I'm going to say this, and I think I've said this a whole bunch of times, is that about CG Lid we'll talk about that later. But first of all, I don't think the comparison between Auron and CG Lid is completely fair, because Lid is primarily a buffer. Auron still feels more like a damage dealer who can do buffs. Now, his Trust Mastery is a Confused, Disease, Petrify Immunity materia with 60% attack with a katana. Really nice. Auron's Super Trust Mastery is 184 attack, 30% MP katana. Now, here's my big problem with this. Super high attack katana? Awesome. Good. Super. It's not true dual hand, and that's the thing that really, really, really hurts this. A true dual hand katana would have been nice to finally have, and this unfortunately is not it. It's a nice high attack and some extra MP, but I just don't know how much I super like this. Also, not necessarily having an element. It feels fine on Auron, but it also feels not so fine because, you know, Auron's true dual hand, so it would have been nice just to have true dual hand here. Anyway, there you go. Now, his materia, just a solid katana mastery with some extra stuff to it, particularly Petrify's Disease and Confuse are all good things to not happen to an attacker. So I'm going to say Auron's Trust Mastery is good. Now, in terms of Auron's base stats, here's the thing. He is kind of split across everything. Particularly, the more important stats are defense and spirit, considering that you probably don't want this guy ever to die since he's your debuffer, potentially. But also his attack is important here, which is a base 202 with an extra 50 points put into stat. And in terms of just raw attack, that basically puts Auron in a position of, yeah, he's pretty decent for attack, but he's never going to be that great, especially as a true dual hand attacker, since both, well, many different characters will flat out beat this guy in terms of raw attack power, including CG Hayu, Cloud, our recently newly added Faye. So this Auron as an attacker definitely has promise, but not nearly as much promise as a whole bunch of other characters, especially when it comes to katanas not having any true dual hand option. It essentially puts Auron in kind of a weird spot. As for the extra stat points you can put in, 50 across the board for the 4 stats, attack, defense, magic, and spirit, and only 50 in attack really hurts him as an attacker. That puts his total attack prowess considerably lower than a lot of other units. And while I'm definitely going to say that that's not necessarily a bad thing, I'm also going to say that it does kind of hurt this guy in terms of what he could do. Definitely not a true dual hand, or I mean a dual wield, but anyway. In terms of what he can equip spears though. So you could in theory do the same thing that Faye has a problem with in, you know, needing true dual hand equipment. You could just put a true dual hand spear on him and then have some options. Other than that, his range of stuff is pretty good. Now, his limit burst is the thing that everyone's kind of excited about, which is a 900% AoE 22 hit at 12 frames, which, well, that's going to be difficult to find a chaining partner with. 12 frames is kind of Sephiroth-y, but 22 hits is kind of weird number. Anyway, it ignores 50% defense, so 1800% is a really solid amount of attack. Also maxed out 3-turn AoE, 79% debuff to fire and wind resistance, and AoE 74% debuff to attack, defense, magic, and spirit for your enemies. Very strong AoE 3-turn debuff there, and this is one of the things that a lot of people are talking about compared to Lid. But what else does he have in his kit? Well, he has a 30% chance to counter with a physical attack. He has many different debuffing abilities. Interestingly, he does have some nice auto regen and recovery of 5% MP per turn. He has just a ton of different debuffs in his kit. 30, buffs to attack, defense, MP. Excuse me. Single target, hit, and debuff, like full break, basically. And in his 5-star kit, he actually can double cast any of his breaks, which are all single target. So, that's pretty good for bosses, for people who need a debuffer. Extra HP, Katana Mastery in his kit, some blind resistance, which is interesting because I don't remember him having that in the game. So 100% natural true dual hand, and some 8-hit at 6-frame chaining abilities that are 450% and hit for also a 3-turn debuff for fire and wind, which is kind of cool. Some high tide, an ability to basically use 2 abilities in a turn, which is kind of interesting, but it's his 6-star abilities now, not his 5-star. So he has 2 different dual use abilities, one for his debuffs, one for his attack abilities, and that's kind of weird. I mean, for one thing, it is good since the only way you want to build this guy is true dual hand, but my god, do not like the lack of flexibility. Something I really like about Faye or Ellie is the fact that they're double cast or triple cast abilities just pick all of their abilities, where this only uses specific stuff. So in his 6-star kit, a little bit more difficult to recommend. For equipping his TMR, which is one of those, it's a bit of a problem with the unit, is the fact that, here's the thing. If you're going to be equipping his Katana Mastery, it kind of shoots him in the foot for true dual hand. And from doing this, he basically gets an extra 50% attack when in true dual handing, which, again, you need katanas. So, god, there better be a true dual hand katana in our future. 3-turn plus 150% to attack and defense after his HP drops below 30%. Grants use of triple casting his attack abilities at the start of the fight for, I believe it's only 1 turn, and upgrades his limit burst to have all the juicy stuff we talked about earlier. Now, also in his 7-star kit is a available turn 1, 6-turn cooldown, AoE debuff for 70% to all stats, and AoE buff the party for 3 turns at 140% for all stats. Now that's a really just solid buff and debuff. On a 6-turn cooldown, though, it definitely is going to require another of him or another of another unit that can do the exact same thing. So that cooldown ability is being super nice, but also definitely has a bit of a drawback. From there, he gets an extra 5% MP recovery per turn, some defense and HP, but more MP the better. That might be the strongest thing about him, just a lot of MP regeneration. And at 90 MP for his other cooldown ability, available turn 4, 3-turn cooldown, gives him a 1000% one-hit physical attack and grants, on a single target, and grants for 1 turn 3 use of a whole bunch of abilities, and also grants him an extra ability that we'll talk about here because it's kind of important. 20% spirit, 40% attack, and some damage modifiers for basically all of his abilities, which is good. And in his last thing, his ability that he unlocks is 250% AoE one-hit physical attack, ignoring 50% defense. Might as well just make it a 500% attack ability, but there you go. And an AoE 2-turn, 70% debuff to everything. 2 turns is okay. The fact that you need to unlock it is a bit of a problem. Now, the thing that everybody's comparing is saying he's so much better than Lid. And yes, he does do damage and debuff. We've seen this before. We've seen Elfim, who buffed and debuffed at the same time. Lid is... how do I say this? I think I like still Lid a little bit more for just being a primary debuffer, because here's the thing, and I've had this conversation before. in chat in multiple times when people have said, well, this is better necessarily than Lid, and I disagree because Lid 7-star has something that every other debuffer still doesn't have. The problem here is with debuffers is the fact that when you use and spend your turn trying to get these big debuffs, which to my knowledge, I just want to double check, Lid still has a 5% higher debuff from her Limit Burst too, which is just kind of nice. Yeah, 79% as opposed to 74%. If you already have a super buffed Lid that is 7 stars, then Auron isn't anything really that special. You're probably better just to have put more focus into your damage dealers and have Lid on the party. Now, the Auron being able to do damage and debuffing is nice, but Lid, one of her cooldown abilities is still the strongest ability as far as I'm concerned in the game when it comes to debuffers, which may be on a 9-turn cooldown on available turn 1, but it's single target stat buff removal and keeps the debuff. So Lid can debuff with her Limit Burst for the 2 turns at 79%, and then if the next turn the enemy buffs itself, well, then she can just remove that buff and your party can keep going, whereas Auron, you're going to kind of, if you spend your Limit Burst, then I hope you have that cooldown ability ready. And if you don't have that cooldown ability ready, then I hope you have your Limit Burst ready. At 30 crystals, it's not necessarily the most difficult thing, considering that this guy does have a natural plus 100% Limit Burst fill rate. I think Auron's perfectly fine, but I don't think he's anything that insane or crazy. His TMR is divisive in his kit, which basically wants you to be true dual hand, but you can't necessarily be it. And in terms of the other thing, it's just, well, his buffs are really nice for anybody who doesn't have a debuffer, or didn't get Lid, or doesn't have a 7-star maxed out Lid, but he does require a lot to make sure that he is at the best, and putting him on katanas right now with no true dual hand katana option just kind of sucks. And his super TMR isn't the answer that I was hoping for. So Auron, completely solid unit, great for anyone who needs a debuffer, and yeah, moving on. And the last unit is Jet. And Jet, when we're talking about Jet, of course, everybody has already made this comparison, is to CG Hayu. And my CG Hayu looks a little bit rough, but there's a reason for that. The Jet's Trust Mastery is a 20% HP and MP, 50% attack with a greatsword. All around just a solid materia. If you get Jet, if you don't plan on using him, his materia is at least very, very good. Trust Mastery reward is Super Trust Mastery reward is a greatsword, 176 attack, plus 100% Limit Burst fail rate. Great, not true dual hand. That hurts me. It really hurts me. The lack of true dual hand support kind of hurts me. Now, in terms of Jet, of course, the most important stat here is attack. He gets an extra 65 points in it, but his base is 204, which puts him slightly above CG Hayu, slightly behind Faye. And I gotta say, that's an interesting position to be in. Faye, it would have been... There's a lot I like about Faye 7-star ever since I've started really experimenting with it. Faye just has a naturally higher attack stat. And here's the thing. When I look at Jet, Jet is a better version of CG Hayu. Now, that is a little bit exciting, just right off the cusp of what we're talking about, because CG Hayu has basically been the top attacker for months. Why would you not want CG Hayu? Or 2.0? Well, I think Jet still feels like CG Hayu 1.2 maybe. And here's the big difference, is that extra point in attack is definitely nice. It can make a big difference. But one thing I would say about that is a big difference is Limit Burst. CG Hayu's Limit Burst at a 1900% versus Jet's Limit Burst at a 1600%. So what's the difference here? What's the big difference? Because I do believe somewhere in his kit he gets a limit burst damage modifier, right? I could be wrong on that. I thought I saw it. If I see it later, I will apologize. But for now, here's the thing. 1600% versus 1900%. What's the big deal here? Like, why are you making a big deal of this, Umbra? Well, the difference is that it's not just the percentages, it's the fact that CG High uses a chaining ability. That's the big difference between Jet and CG Hayu, is the fact that a chaining ability will always do more damage than a one-hit ability. I mean, either that or you need chaining abilities. Now, and the fact is that 2 Hayu's limit burst we've seen what it can do. It's much more massive, it's much stronger. But with that being said, 1600% AoE one-hit attack that also grants an ability for 3 turns, as well as triple cast for 3 turns, is perfectly fine. It's fine, but CG Hayu still wins in the limit burst category by a long shot. It's not even close how that is, especially considering that CG Hayu with Bahamut's Tear is just infinitely stronger than anything Jet can do with his limit burst. So, what do I like in Jet's kit? Well, in Jet's kit, he does have the ability to do a water attack and give himself water to his attacks for 4 turns. That is a problem with CG Hayu, is trying to get an element on CG Hayu. If you don't have an element on CG Hayu, it does make it a little bit more difficult to do properly, and I gotta say, that's just something nice in Jet. Jet also has a 30% chance to dodge physical attacks, so that's great. I don't think you ever want to build this guy for dodge, but just it could make him more survivable in long-term fights. Gains limit burst per turn, 30% attack, 20% MP. Some attacks with Petrify that recover 70 MP to himself is really nice. 30% HP, 50% extra attack with Greatsword. Some attacks that cause disease AoE too, and 40% AoE disease is actually useful in 10-man trials, so this guy has his value. 200% limit burst fill rate, 100% blind, sleep, and paralyze resist, all good things, and starting a 6-star kit, he gains the ability to use his abilities 2 times. Well, that's perfectly fine for building this guy as a true dual hand, and when Alum told me that he was going to be able to be built as a dual-wield character, I said, why? And this is it. This is why. Why bother? Anyway, true dual hand or get the fuck out. 30% chance to counter with a physical attack that debuffs defense for 70% for 1 turn and self-buffs 150% attack. That's kind of cool. I got to admit, that is kind of cool. An AoE 1-hit physical attack, ignoring 50% defense, filling limit burst, perfectly fine. Some water resistance, 50% natural water resistance is good for a lot of the water trials recently. 5% MP per turn, which is good. You don't want your guy to run out of MP, even though he has that MP regen ability. Single hit attack, 60% debuff, that's good. 50% extra damage versus beasts, birds, demons, and a 50% attack when true dual handing, and 30% when dual wielding. 100% when dual wielding. Okay, no. Okay, so some true dual hand in his kit is good so far. We're only at 50% though, so I hope there's a little bit more as we go down. Now on his Holy Explosion frame attack, which is only 6 hits, not 7, so it doesn't perfectly chain with Holy Explosion, even though it's Holy Explosion frames. That's truly questionable. It does ignore 50% defense, and then it does have a final hit at 250%, ignoring 50% defense, and debuffs water to a single target, so this attack is just all kinds of jumble. I guess if the last hit still hits on Holy Explosion frames, that's cool. It's a CG Hayu attack on Holy Explosion frames. That's really strong. Now, he also has his quick trigger or Tidus chaining ability that's 120%, 11 hits, and finishes with a single strong hit at the end. So basically, he's got 2 chaining abilities with capper abilities at the end. That's kind of interesting. From there, he has an attack that not only gives himself 1 turn 20% physical damage reduction, also grants his triple cast per turn. I'm not sure how that is in his 6-star kit, but it's interesting. From there, equipping his TMR, which you might as well because his TMR is pretty great. Extra stats from the equipped Esper, 50% when true dual handing, 30% attack when dual wielding. Basically, you only want a true dual hand. And the weird thing I gotta say about this ability, or this, is only 100% true dual hand means that you will need to potentially, if you don't have 2 clouds, you're gonna have to be spending some extra space trying to get this guy up to 100% true, or 300% true dual hand. That's what I meant to say. His cooldown ability removes all debuffs on himself, gives himself a modifier for his ability, and grants triple cast of his abilities, while granting, I believe, an ability for 3 turns too. From there, his available turn 8 on a 7-turn cooldown is a 900% one-hit physical attack, ignoring 50%. So that is a very strong ability, but it's so late in the battle, it just might not be good enough. We'll see. And from there, 20% defense and 20% to HP, 40% to... The way that's parsed out is super weird. Might be attack, 20% MP with a great sword, I guess, and some modifiers for a whole bunch of his abilities. Now, although I can't see an unlocked ability, so I'm not entirely sure what that's about. Anyway, here's the thing. When it comes to Jet, Jet has a really, really super solid kit in him. Auron has a, well, not as good, but still a solid kit too. Here's the thing. On this banner, if you have CG Citra and you want to make any of the summoners really good that require magic as well, then Belgemine is a good get. Brother is just a solid get, but he's a 3-star. You'll probably get tons of him. It's not worth trying for. This is a Mog King, so you will be trying to pull anyway. Out of the two, I would say Jet is the solidly better unit. But if you already have CG Hayu, Randy, and Faye, or any of these 3, then I wouldn't necessarily wail for Jet. And here's the big problem, because we know that Axstar, CG Wind Veritas, and CG Fire Veritas, all 3 that are pretty much guaranteed to be physical attackers, are coming in the near future. And especially if Axstar is right around the corner, we could see the classic thing of Alum being like, oh yeah, well, here's Axstar. He's an incredibly popular character. He's a physical damage dealer. He's true dual hand, and he's better than both of these characters. Because, like I said, Jet does feel like a 1.2 times. He's definitely got a lot of good abilities in his kit, and he's absolutely solid. He doesn't beat Hayu's Limit Burst, and Hayu's Limit Burst is more insane than anything in Jet's kit. But as I'm looking at Jet, I gotta say, he's absolutely perfectly solid at the same time. He is a powerful unit. I would not be sad to get him, but especially with the way my count is right now, having a maxed out CG Hayu, a maxed out Faye, and a maxed out Randy, this is just not, I'm just going to pass on this other than Mog bonus unit stuff and basically wait for Axstar, which will, the longer Axstar goes out, the better Axstar will be than both of these units, I think. So that's just potentially more exciting, and considering that Axstar did have a bigger part in the story, and we know that he's coming very soon, might just be a good investment. Anyway, guys, sorry for the incredibly long video, but there is a lot to talk about with this upcoming banner, and I'm going to end this in under 30 minutes. Leave your comments if you think I missed anything or didn't do a good job about something. I could have missed something. It's a lot to try and get in under 30 minutes, and I will be talking more about these units in their own reviews later. So until then, talk to you later.